A frantic search was initiated, using every resource Vance Industries had: drones, private investigators, a legion of security personnel. Every corner of the city was scoured. Hours passed, each one a torment. Alex was a man on the brink, his cold facade cracking under the immense weight of his fear. Suddenly, the doors of the boardroom swung open. Alex walked in, his face pale, but his eyes burning with an icy fire. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the room like a shard of glass. "I believe I am just in time for the vote." The rain fell in sheets, washing the city of Viridia in a dismal gray. Inside her small flower shop, Lynn's little blooms. Lynn worked with a quiet, focused grace, her hands moving like a dancer's as she arranged a bouquet of white lilies. The scent of fresh-cut flowers was a welcome antidote to the gloom outside. Lynn, with her simple ponytail and a smudged apron, was a picture of serene contentment, a stark contrast to the chaos about to erupt. Marcus's smug expression instantly vanished, replaced by a look of shocked horror. "Alex, you're supposed to be sick. This is highly irregular." A sudden, frantic pounding on the glass door made her jump. A small, rain-soaked boy, no older than 6, stood there, his eyes wide with terror. His expensive-looking coat was torn, and his small face was a mask of sheer panic. Behind him, 2 large men in dark suits scanned the street, their gazes predatory and cold. "I took a turn for the better," Alex said, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "And I believe I have a far more compelling argument to present." "Please, help me!" the boy screamed, his voice muffled by the wind. He projected Lynn's evidence onto the large screen, the falsified financial records, the emails from Marcus to the men who had kidnapped Leo, and finally, the damning video footage of Marcus and Derek's phone call, their treacherous words echoing through the silent boardroom. Lynn's heart pounded. Without a second thought, she unlocked the door and pulled him inside, her hand gripping his small, trembling one. "Quickly, come here," she whispered, guiding him behind a tall shelving unit packed with towering ferns and pots of vibrant orchids. "Stay quiet." The board members, a group of powerful, ambitious men, watched in stunned silence. Their shock turned to disgust as the full extent of Marcus's treachery was revealed. The man they had almost entrusted with the future of their company was a villain, a criminal. The men's footsteps echoed outside, their voices gruff. "Where did the little brat go?" one of them growled. "He couldn't have disappeared." Marcus, his face white with rage and fear, lunged at Alex. "You traitor! You set me up!" Lynn held the boy close, her arm protectively wrapped around his shoulders. She felt his ragged breathing against her side, his small body a bundle of fear. He smelled of rain and expensive cologne. "Don't worry," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "You're safe now." Alex sidestepped him with practiced ease. "I didn't set you up, Uncle. Your own greed did. You went after my son. You violated the sanctity of my family. That is unforgivable." The men peered through the glass, their eyes scanning the interior. Lynn's heart hammered against her ribs, but she met their gaze with a calm defiance she didn't know she possessed. One of them motioned to the other, and they moved on, their heavy strides fading into the city's downpour. The security guards, who had been watching from the shadows, moved in and restrained a screaming, cursing Marcus. Derek, a coward at heart, fled the room. Justice was swift and brutal. The board voted unanimously to remove Marcus, and a criminal investigation was immediately launched. Lynn let out a shaky breath and knelt down, bringing her face to the boy's level. He had a mop of dark hair, a cut on his cheek, and eyes so blue they seemed to hold the entire ocean. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. After the chaos subsided, Alex walked out of the boardroom, his face still and controlled. He found Lynn waiting for him, her face a mixture of relief and concern. He looked at her then, at the woman who had walked into his life and changed everything. She was the anchor in his storm, the one person who saw past the power and the wealth, to the man beneath. He nodded, burrowing his face into her shoulder. "Thank you," he mumbled, his voice thick with tears. "My name's Leo." "You were right," he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "You were right about everything." He took her hand, his touch surprisingly gentle. The world had just seen Alex Vance, the powerful CEO. But Lynn saw Alex, the man, the father. and the grateful heart who had found his way back from the brink because of a simple act of kindness. "I'm Lynn," she replied, her voice a comforting balm. She held him until his shaking subsided, the rhythmic ticking of the shop's clock the only sound in the quiet space. She had no idea that this small act of kindness would be the catalyst that would forever change her life, weaving her fate with a world of unimaginable power and deep-seated betrayal. With Marcus and Derek gone, a sense of peace settled over the Vance mansion. The oppressive, watchful atmosphere dissipated, replaced by a feeling of warmth and security. Mrs. Gable, having been confronted with the evidence of Marcus's bribe, tearfully confessed her mistake and was given a second chance. Her loyalty to the Vance family rekindled. Leo, finally free from the threat of danger, was happier than Lynn had ever seen him, his laughter echoing through the halls. The call came as a single, piercing ring that shattered the silence of Alex Vance's office. Alex, the formidable CEO of Vance Industries, a man whose reputation was as cold and sharp as the steel and glass of his corporate empire, rarely took calls that didn't go through his assistant, but this one was from a number he recognized with a sickening dread. It was his security team. Lynn, however, still felt a sense of unease. The initial purpose of her stay was over. The debt was paid. She was a florist, not a corporate guardian. She knew it was time to go back to her own life, to her small shop and her quiet world of flowers. "We lost him, sir." The voice on the other end was clipped and strained. "The men. They took him." One evening, she found Alex waiting for her by the window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. He looked different, less like a powerful CEO and more like a man at peace. "Lynn," he began, "we need to talk." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The heavy mahogany desk, the panoramic view of the city, the very air in the room, all became a blur. The men. Not a kidnapping. This was a hostile takeover. This was an act of war, and the target was his son. "I know," she said, her voice soft. "My work here is done. The threat is gone. I need to go back to my shop." His son, the only light in his meticulously organized, emotionally barren life. "Leo, and what if I don't want you to go?" he asked, turning to face her. His blue eyes, which had once been so cold, now held a depth of emotion that made her breath catch in her throat. "What if I can't imagine this house, this life, without you? What if my son needs you, not just as a guardian, but as family?" Alex slammed the phone down, the sound echoing like a gunshot. He was a man accustomed to control, to anticipating every threat, to outmaneuvering every rival. But this was personal. This was family. He had suspected his uncle, Marcus Vance, and his cousin, Derek, were plotting something. But he never imagined they would stoop to this. They wanted control of the company, and they were willing to use his child as leverage. Lynn's heart fluttered. This was a man who had everything, a man who could have any woman he wanted. Yet he was standing here, looking at her with a vulnerability she never thought she would see. He was about to lose hope when a call came in from the city police, a tip-off from a passerby. A small boy, matching Leo's description, was seen entering a flower shop on the edge of the city. Alex's heart, a muscle he had long believed was capable only of pumping blood, leaped with a fierce, desperate hope. "Alex," she stammered, "I'm just a florist. You're a CEO. We live in two different worlds." He drove himself, his car tearing through the rain-slicked streets, a blur of motion against the static city. He burst into Lynn's little blooms, his presence a jarring, powerful force in the small, delicate space. He saw her first a young woman, her face a perfect oval, her eyes wide with apprehension, but his gaze went past her, to the small figure peeking out from behind a large potted plant. He took a step toward her, closing the distance between them. "No!" he said, his voice low and earnest. "We live in the same world now. My world was empty, Lynn. It was a gilded cage, a corporate battlefield. But you brought life into it. You brought kindness, warmth, and the simple beauty of a rosebush. You showed me what's truly important." "Leo," he whispered, his voice cracking with relief. He reached out and gently touched the stray tendril of hair that had fallen across her cheek. "I don't just want to repay a debt of kindness, Lynn. I want to build a life with you. I want you to stay. For me. For Leo. For us." Leo scrambled out, running to his father. "Daddy, he cried, burying his face in Alex's suit. The city lights outside seemed to fade, and the only thing Lynn could see was the man in front of her, a man who was no longer just a powerful CEO, but the love of her life. She was no longer just a florist, but a woman who had found her destiny in the most unexpected of places. The golden cage had become a home, and the world of flowers had blossomed into a world of love. Alex held him, his arms tight, his body trembling with a mix of fury and profound relief. He was a man used to giving orders, not showing emotion, but in that moment, he was just a father, holding his son, his fortress of ice shattered by the warmth of the small body in his arms. He looked up at the woman who had sheltered his son. She was a simple florist, an unassuming figure in a world of high-stakes corporate warfare. But she had been his son's guardian angel. Lynn's acceptance of Alex's proposal sent shockwaves through the elite society of Viridia. The news of the formidable CEO of Vance Industries marrying a simple florist was the talk of the town. The initial gossip was brutal, filled with speculation and ridicule. Lynn was labeled a gold digger, a fortune hunter. Alex, as always, was a fortress of calm, shielding her from the negativity. "Let them talk," he would say, his hand clasped firmly in hers. "Their words are as empty as their lives." The days following the incident were a blur for Lynn. Alex Vance had been a whirlwind of gratitude and overwhelming power. He had paid for the damage to her shop, replaced the ferns that had been knocked over, and even sent a team to install a state-of-the-art security system. But what was more surprising was his repeated visits. Lynn, however, was not as impervious. The constant scrutiny and cruel whispers were a heavy burden. She felt like an imposter, a fragile flower in a garden of thorns. She began to doubt herself, to question whether she truly belonged in Alex's world. He would arrive in a sleek black car, his presence a magnet for curious glances from passers-by, and sit quietly in the back of her shop, watching Lynn work. He brought Leo, who would run straight to Lynn, wrapping his arms around her legs and chattering away about his day. The initial coldness had thawed, replaced by a quiet, watchful intensity. He was studying her, observing her world with a curiosity that seemed out of place on such a powerful man. Her old life, her flower shop, seemed a lifetime away. She missed the quiet, the simplicity, the genuine smiles of her customers, the luxurious world of the Vance estate. Once a source of comfort, now felt like a suffocating presence. She wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. One afternoon, as the sun broke through the clouds, he found Lynn meticulously repotting a dying rose bush. "Why do you bother?" he asked, his voice low. "It's already gone." One evening, she found a picture of her old shop on her phone. She looked at the image of the simple, humble space, her heart aching with a mixture of nostalgia and regret. Alex walked in and saw the look on her face. He knelt beside her, his gaze gentle and understanding. Lynn paused, a smudge of dirt on her cheek. "It's not gone," she said, her voice soft but firm. "It just needs a little care. You can't give up on something just because it looks broken." She looked at him then, her eyes holding a depth of understanding that surprised him. She wasn't just talking about the rose bush. She was talking about people. "I know," he said, his voice soft. "This isn't your world. Lynn, it's mine. And I've been a fool to try and force you into it." Alex found himself strangely captivated by her. She was a stark contrast to the women in his world, the polished, ambitious, and calculating women who saw him as a prize to be won. Lynn saw him as just a man, a father in distress. Lynn's eyes filled with tears. I feel so lost," she whispered. "I don't belong here." That evening, as he was about to leave, he turned back to her. "Lynn," he began, his tone uncharacteristically hesitant, "I owe you. You saved my son. I want to repay that debt." "You don't have to," he said, his eyes a mirror of her own pain. "This isn't about me forcing you to live my life. It's about us building a life together, our life, with our own rules, our own space." Lynn shook her head, a soft smile on her face. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Vance. I just did what anyone would do." The next day, Alex did something that shocked everyone. He bought the empty lot next to Lynn's flower shop. With a team of architects and landscapers, he began to build a new space, a place where their worlds would collide. It wasn't a mansion or a corporate office. It was a beautiful, sprawling glass conservatory, a place where Lynn could continue her passion for flowers on a grander scale, a place where Leo could play among the plants. and where Alex could escape from the pressures of his corporate life. No, he insisted, his blue eyes intense. Not everyone would. I want to offer you a job, a position at Vance Industries. You would be a personal assistant to my son, a nanny, but more. Someone he trusts, someone I can trust. I won't take no for an answer. He didn't just give her a home, he gave her a purpose. He didn't just repay a debt, he built a future. He didn't just love a woman, he celebrated her. He showed her that true love wasn't about changing a person to fit into your world, but about building a new world where they could both thrive. Lynn was stunned. The world of Vance Industries was a galaxy away from her quiet flower shop. She was a florist, not a corporate professional. But then she looked at Leo, who was holding her hand, his little face a mixture of hope and anxiety. She saw the genuine need in Alex's eyes, a need that transcended his power and wealth. The grand opening of Lynn's garden conservatory was a day of pure magic. The glass conservatory, filled with an exotic array of flowers and plants, was a breathtaking sight. It was a sanctuary, a testament to Alex's love and Lynn's passion. The event was attended not just by the elite of Viridia, but by the people from Lynn's old life, her friends and old customers, who had watched her journey with a mix of pride and admiration. I don't know anything about that world, she stammered. Lynn, dressed in a simple but elegant white dress, stood by Alex's side, a picture of grace and happiness. The whispers and the gossip had finally died down, replaced by a genuine sense of awe and respect. The florist had not only married the CEO, but she had also transformed his life, and in doing so, had created a beautiful world of her own. You know how to be kind, he said simply. That's all I need. Leo, a little prince in a tiny suit, held her hand, his eyes sparkling with happiness. The three of them, a family born out of a moment of kindness, stood together, their futures intertwined like the vines in the conservatory. Lynn's life was turned upside down. Her little flower shop was left in the care of her best friend, Mia, and she was whisked away into the gilded world of Vance Industries. The transition was jarring. The silence of her shop was replaced by the constant buzz of activity, the soft earth of her garden by the cold marble floors of the Vance mansion. Lynn looked at Alex, her eyes filled with a love so profound it felt like a silent promise. She saw the boy he once was, lost and lonely, and the man he had become, strong and loving. He had given her a new life, a life of luxury and power. But more importantly, he had given her a life of love and purpose. Her new role was demanding. She was not just a nanny, she was Leo's confidant, his teacher, and his protector. She read him stories in a sprawling library, helped him with his homework in a room overlooking manicured gardens, and accompanied him to a whirlwind of social events. Leo, who had been withdrawn and cautious before, blossomed under her care. And Alex, in turn, looked at her, his heart full. The cold, impenetrable CEO was gone. In his place was a man who had learned that true wealth was not measured in corporate assets, but in the kindness of a heart, the warmth of a home, and the love of a family. He had found his soulmate in the most unexpected of places, a simple flower shop on a rainy day, and his debt of kindness had been repaid with a lifetime of love. The other staff at the mansion, however, were not as welcoming. Mrs. Gable, the stern, gray-haired housekeeper, viewed Lynn with thinly veiled suspicion. The personal security detail, a group of stoic men in dark suits, were polite but distant. They were all cogs in a well-oiled machine, and Lynn, with her humble background and gentle spirit, was an anomaly. Their happiness was short-lived. A sudden turn of events threatened to tear them apart. A rival company, secretly backed by Marcus Vance from prison, launched a hostile takeover bid against Vance Industries. Marcus, a man consumed by his own greed and hatred, had found a way to continue his malicious schemes from behind bars. Alex, in his own way, was a part of this golden cage. He was a whirlwind of meetings, travel, and corporate battles. He would often come home late, his face a mask of exhaustion, and find Lynn and Leo curled up on the couch, reading a book. He would watch them, a rare, almost imperceptible softness in his eyes, before retreating to his office. He was a man of immense power, but he was also incredibly lonely. The attack was calculated and vicious. It wasn't just a corporate battle, it was a personal vendetta. The rival company, led by a ruthless CEO named Julian Thorne, began to spread false rumors about Alex, accusing him of financial misconduct and corporate espionage. The media, hungry for a scandal, lapped it all up. Lynn, for all her comfort, felt out of place. She missed the simple joy of working with flowers, the quiet peace of her shop. The luxury that surrounded her felt foreign and cold. She was living a fairy tale, but it was one she hadn't written herself. She knew that her position was temporary, a debt repaid, and that one day she would have to go back to her old life. But she was falling for the little boy she cared for, and she was, against her better judgment, beginning to fall for his distant, complicated father. Alex, in the face of this new threat, was a fortress of calm. He had faced countless corporate battles before, but this time it was different. He had something to lose now. Lynn and Leo. He saw the fear in Lynn's eyes and the anxiety in Leo's face, and his resolve hardened. He would not let Marcus destroy his family again. Lynn's life at the Vance mansion was not without its shadows. Marcus Vance, Alex's uncle, was a frequent visitor. He was a man with a charming smile and a cold glint in his eyes. He treated Lynn with a patronizing politeness, a subtle condescension that made her skin crawl. He would watch her, a calculating look in his eyes, as if she were a piece on a chessboard, not a person. Julian Thorne was a formidable opponent, a man with a cold, calculating mind and a network of powerful allies. He was a man who played dirty, a man who saw no line he wouldn't cross to get what he wanted. "Such a pity that you have to work in this environment," he would say, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "The corporate world is so ugly. A delicate flower like you shouldn't be here." Lynn, however, was not the naive florist she once was. She was now a part of the Vance family, and she was ready to fight. She began to use her quiet observational skills to gather information about Julian. She learned about his lavish lifestyle, his shady business dealings, and his secret alliance with Marcus. She found a connection, a single thread of truth, that could unravel his entire conspiracy. Lynn knew he was trying to undermine her, to make her feel small and unworthy, but she held her ground, her quiet strength a shield against his veiled insults. She discovered that Julian Thorne, before he was a CEO, was an old friend of Marcus Vance. She dug deeper, and a startling truth was revealed. Julian Thorne was the man who had been the original head of security for Vance Industries, the very man who had lost Leo. He had been a double agent, working for Marcus all along, a traitor in the heart of Alex's own company. The betrayal was deep, the deception absolute. It was a twist no one had seen coming, a revelation that would change the course of the battle. One afternoon, she overheard a conversation between Marcus and his son, Derek. They were in the study, their voices low and conspiratorial. "The boy is too attached to her," Derek said, his voice a venomous hiss. "She's a threat. She's making him strong." The battle was set. A crucial board meeting, a final showdown between Alex Vance and Julian Thorne. The future of Vance Industries and the happiness of Alex's family hung in the balance. "Don't worry," Marcus replied with a cruel laugh. "Every flower has a weakness. We just need to find hers. We'll make her an offer she can't refuse, and if that doesn't work, we'll find a way to get her out of the picture. She's a nobody. No one will miss her." Julian, confident in his victory, presented his case with a flourish, his words painting a picture of Alex as a man of deceit and corruption. The board, influenced by the media frenzy and Julian's polished lies, seemed to be leaning toward the takeover. Lynn's blood ran cold. They weren't just trying to hurt Alex. They were trying to hurt Leo, and anyone who stood in their way. She realized the danger was far from over. Her simple act of kindness had not only saved a life, it had made her a target. She knew she had to be careful, to be strong, not just for herself, but for Leo. She was no longer just a hired hand. She was a guardian, a silent warrior in a battle she never asked to be a part of. She would protect Leo at all costs. But Alex, armed with Lynn's evidence, was ready. He stood up, his voice calm and steady, and began to dismantle Julian's entire argument. He presented the evidence of Julian's betrayal, his past as the treacherous security chief, his secret phone calls with a now imprisoned Marcus Vance, and the falsified documents he had used to frame Alex. Lynn's discovery of Marcus and Derek's plot changed everything. She was no longer just an observer in the Vance world, she was a participant, a silent player in a dangerous game. She began to pay close attention to details, to the whispers in the hallways, to the subtle glances exchanged between Marcus and certain staff members. She noticed that the security guards who had lost Leo were now working directly for Marcus. A sickening realization dawned on her. The kidnapping wasn't a failure, it was a setup. The men who chased Leo were Marcus's men. The boardroom, which had been a sea of murmurs and nods, fell into a stunned silence. Julian's face, which had been a mask of triumphant arrogance, turned a sickly shade of white. His carefully constructed web of lies was unraveling before his very eyes. She knew she had to tell Alex, but she also knew he was a man of logic and facts. Her suspicions, without proof, would be dismissed as paranoia. She decided to gather evidence, to build a case against the man who pretended to be a loving uncle while plotting to destroy his own family. "Julian Thorne," Alex said, his voice ringing with authority, "you are not just a rival. You were a traitor. You betrayed my trust. You endangered my son. And you tried to destroy my company. You are a man without honor, a man without a soul." She began to document everything she saw, everything she heard. She found old company records in a discarded file and discovered a pattern of questionable transactions linked to Marcus. She noticed a hidden camera in Leo's playroom, a chilling violation of his privacy. She even found evidence of a second hidden security detail, men who answered only to Marcus. Julian, cornered and desperate, lunged at Alex, but he was quickly restrained by the same security guards who had once been under his command. He was taken away, his reign of terror over. One night, she waited until Alex was home, tired and alone in his office. She walked in, her hands trembling, holding a thick folder. "Mr. Vance," she began, her voice steady despite her fear. "We need to talk. About Marcus." The board, witnessing the swift and brutal delivery of justice, voted unanimously to reject the takeover bid and to support Alex Vance as the head of Vance Industries. The battle was won. Alex had not only saved his company, but he had also saved his family, all with the help of the woman who had walked into his life and changed it forever. Alex looked up, a frown on his face. "Lynn, I'm not in the mood for complaints." The days following the boardroom showdown were a blur of media interviews, corporate announcements, and tearful reunions. Alex, now more than ever, realized that his greatest strength was not his corporate prowess, but the love and support of his family. "This isn't a complaint," she said, her voice rising with a passion she didn't know she possessed. "This is a warning. I think Marcus is planning something. He's been spying on Leo. He was behind the kidnapping. He took a month-long break from work, a decision that shocked the corporate world. But he didn't care. He wanted to spend time with Lynn and Leo, to show them that they were his priority, his true wealth." Alex's face was a mask of skepticism. "Lynn, that's a serious accusation. Marcus is my uncle." He took Lynn back to her flower shop. It was still there, looked after by Mia. They spent the day arranging flowers, the scent of the petals a gentle reminder of the simpler times. It was here, surrounded by the beautiful creations of her hands, that Lynn felt truly at home. "He's a snake," she insisted, pushing the folder toward him. "Look at this. He's been siphoning money from the company. He's been in touch with the men who chased Leo. I found a hidden camera in the playroom." Alex watched her, a quiet smile on his face. He saw the joy on her face, the love in her eyes. He had given her a world of luxury, but she had given him a world of love, a world where he could be a man, a father, a husband, and not just a CEO. Alex's skepticism slowly turned to a chilling fury as he looked through the documents. The evidence was damning. The numbers didn't lie. The camera footage, which Lynn had managed to secretly download, showed Marcus watching Leo, a cold, calculating look on his face. He saw the truth, a truth he had refused to see out of a misguided sense of family loyalty. That evening, as they were about to leave, he knelt down and looked at her. "Lynn," he said, his voice filled with a love that transcended all words. "You saved my son. You saved me. And now, you've saved my company. You've shown me that true power isn't about wealth or status, but about kindness, integrity, and love. I am forever in your debt, and I will spend my life repaying it." He looked at Lynn, his eyes filled with a new kind of respect. "Why did you do this?" he asked, his voice low and full of emotion. Lynn's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of happiness. She was no longer a simple florist. She was a woman who had found her destiny, a woman who had taught a CEO the true meaning of life. She had not only found love, but she had found her own strength, her own voice, and her own beautiful garden in a world that had once seemed too big and too cruel. "I promised Leo he was safe with me," she said simply. "I intend to keep that promise." Years passed. The Vance empire, under Alex's leadership, flourished, not with a cold, calculating hand, but with a heart guided by kindness and integrity. Alex and Lynn, now a symbol of a love story that had defied all odds, became pillars of their community. He extended his hand, a silent pact between them. "Thank you. Lynn, you didn't just save my son's life that day. You saved my family. Now, we fight back." Their home was not the cold, sterile mansion it once was, but a warm, bustling space filled with the laughter of children. They had a daughter, a beautiful, lively girl, with her mother's kind heart and her father's brilliant mind. With Lynn's evidence, Alex's cold facade hardened into a steely resolve. He had to be careful. Marcus was a cunning opponent who held a significant position on the company's board. A frontal assault would only lead to a messy corporate battle that could damage the company's reputation. Alex decided to play Marcus's game, but on his own terms. Leo, now a handsome young man, was the pride of his parents, a compassionate and intelligent young man who was not only a gifted student but a kind-hearted soul, just like his mother. He and Lynn began to work in secret. Lynn, with her quiet observations and sharp instincts, became his eyes and ears in the house. She noticed the small details that Alex, blinded by the corporate world's grand schemes, often missed. She noticed Marcus's frequent hushed phone calls, his agitated glances toward Alex's office, and a sudden lavish gift to Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper, who had been a loyal servant to the Vance family for decades. The conservatory, once a symbol of their love, had grown into a thriving business, a place where people from all walks of life could come to find a moment of peace, to be surrounded by the simple beauty of nature. Lynn, the florist who had once struggled to make ends meet, was now a successful businesswoman, a mentor to aspiring florists, and a symbol of resilience and grace. The gift of a vintage pearl necklace was a tell. It was a bribe. Lynn began to observe Mrs. Gable, noticing her change in attitude, her subtle attempts to pry information from Lynn about Alex's schedule and Leo's activities. The gentle, motherly housekeeper had become a pawn in Marcus's game. One afternoon, Alex found Lynn in the garden, tending to a beautiful rose bush. She was in her element, her face serene, her hands gentle. He watched her for a moment, his heart full of an emotion so profound it defied all words. The plan unfolded. Alex, feigning a sudden illness, announced a week-long absence from the office, creating a power vacuum that he knew Marcus would be eager to fill. Marcus, thinking the coast was clear, began to move. He called for a special board meeting, a meeting he knew Alex couldn't attend, to push through a vote that would give him control of the company's most lucrative subsidiary. He had once been a man of power and wealth, a man who had built an empire of steel and glass. But now, he was a man who had built a legacy of kindness, a family of love, and a life of purpose. He was no longer a CEO repaying a debt. He was a man who had found his truest treasure, not in a bank vault, but in a simple, beautiful garden, tended by the hands of the woman who had once saved his son, and in doing so, had saved him. Lynn, using the hidden camera she had found, was able to record Marcus's triumphant phone call to Derek, in which he gloated about his victory and their final plan to take over the company. The evidence was undeniable. It was the last piece of the puzzle. The journey had been long, filled with twists, turns, and dangers. But through it all, one thing had remained true: a single act of kindness. A simple gesture of a warm heart had the power to change not just one life, but a legacy, a family, and a world. And in the end, it was not the power of a CEO that had triumphed, but the quiet, unwavering strength of a kind heart. That night, as Lynn and Alex worked in the dimly lit study, she found herself captivated by him. The distant, cold CEO had been replaced by a man of fierce intellect and unwavering loyalty. A man who, despite his power, was not afraid to rely on her. A simple florist. Their hands brushed as they went through the documents, and a spark, undeniable and electric, passed between them. It was a silent acknowledgement of the bond that had formed between them. a bond forged in danger and sealed with trust. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay with us for the next one. And while you're here, check out our other videos. There's always more to explore. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments below. The board meeting was a tense affair. Marcus, sitting at the head of the long table, was a picture of smug confidence. He presented his case, his words a symphony of half-truths and polished lies, making it seem as though his plan was for the good of the company. The board, many of whom were swayed by his smooth talk and promises of inflated returns, seemed to be on his side.